We're reading from Chaitanya Bhagavata, Madhya. We completed, and that's Madhya Kanda, and we completed Adi Kanda, which ends with Lord Chaitanya going to Gaya and receiving Diksha from Ishwara Puri. And then Madhya Kanda begins, and his manner, ecstatic manner of speaking the glories of the holy name, Nam Sankirtan, and different examples of his revealing, the way that is described here, reveals his opulence or his divinity. A really nice one was with Advaita Acharya, because Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu, and he's the one who called Lord Chaitanya to descend, and he knew it, but Lord Chaitanya previously was the wrangling scholar, too high down, the debating, challenging, feisty, scholarly Nimai Pandit. And then he became a devotee, but he's not revealing his divinity. So Advaita Acharya desired to see that. Lord Chaitanya reciprocated. Nice chapter, very beautiful. Then another chapter is Pundarik Vidyanidhi. Pundarik Vidyanidhi, not so well known, but Lord Chaitanya continually referred to him as Father. And in Krishna Lila, he's Radharani's father, Rishabhanu. But in Gaura Lila, he conceals his identity behind a facade of looking like a sense gratifier, a materially indulgent, opulent person, like a king or prince, with servants and fans and this and that, scented oils and hairdo and the whole thing. But he's revealed as being an ecstatic devotee. So he and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are then reunited. So it flows like that, just introducing personalities one after the next, and Lord Chaitanya's loving relationship with them in this inimitable style of Vrindavan Das Thakur. So now, we're not going to read the whole chapter because it's long, but it's chapter 8, the manifestation of opulences. The Mahaprakash Lila. You're familiar with that, right? Yes? Okay. And if you haven't heard the style of Vrindavan Das, get ready for being very relaxed and, hear his calling from his heart, and he'll carry you to emotions that we're not used to accessing regularly. All glories to Sri Gaura Sundara, the life and soul of all. All glories to the abode of Nityananda and Advaita's love. All glories to the life of Sri Jagatananda and Sri Garbha. All glories to the life and wealth of Sri Pundarika Vidyanidhi. All glories to the Lord of Jagadish and Gopinath. May all the devotees of Lord Gaurachandra be glorified. In this way, Sri Gauranga Rai constantly enjoyed various pastimes with Nityananda in Navadvip. All the devotees accompanied Advaita in jubilation, in jubilant dancing and loud chanting of the names of Krishna. Nityananda continued to reside in the house of Srivas Pandit. He was constantly in the mood of a child and did not manifest any other mood. Did we already read this? Okay. He would not eat rice with his own hands, so Malini fed him like her own son. There's some very beautiful sketches and paintings of this. Malini was elderly. Nityananda was 32 plus, and he would sit there like a little boy who wouldn't eat. I've seen little, boys that are old enough to eat, and they won't eat, and they'll only eat if their mother puts food in their mouth, and then they eat. So Nityananda was like that, looking to her in that way. The chaste Malini knew well the glories of Nityananda. Therefore, she served him as a mother serves her son. One day, the Lord was sitting and discussing topics of Krishna with Srivas. In order to test Srivas, Lord Vishrambar said, "Why are you letting this Avaduta stay in your home? I know you are very magnanimous, but we do not know which caste and which family he belongs to. If you want to protect your own caste and family, then you should immediately get rid of this Avaduta." Srivas Pandit smiled and said, "Oh Lord, it is not proper for you to test me. If anyone worships you for a day, he is my life and soul. Nityananda is your body, and I am the witness of this fact. Even if Nityananda holds a pot of wine, associates with women, and spoils my caste, life, and wealth, still my faith will not waver. This is a fact I am telling you." When the Lord heard this from the mouth of Srivas, he got up, roared loudly, and embraced him to his chest. "Oh, Pandit Srivas, what did you say? You have so much faith in Nityananda. You have understood my confidential associate, Nityananda. Therefore, I am most pleased with you and desire to give you a benediction. Even if Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, begs alms from door to door, you will never be afflicted with poverty. Everyone in your house, including the dogs and cats, will have unflinching devotion for me. I am offering Nityananda to you. Please take care of him in all respects." After giving this benediction to Srivas, the Lord returned home. Nityananda continued to wander throughout Madhya. He sometimes swam in the Ganges, and sometimes he happily floated in the current. Sometimes he played with the boys. Sometimes he went to the houses of Gangadas and Murari. Sometimes he rushed to the Lord's house, where Mother Sachi showered him with affection. In the mood of a child, Nityananda tried to catch hold of Mother Sachi's feet, but she would run away. One day, Mother Sachi had a dream, which she narrated to her son Vishrambar in a solitary place. Quote, "Early this morning I had a dream in which I saw you and Nityananda. Both of you appeared like 5-year-old boys. You were quarreling together and chasing each other. In this way, you both entered the deity room and came out holding Krishna and Balaram in your hands. He had Krishna in his hands, and you had Balaram. Then I clearly saw the 4 of you quarreling together. The deities of Krishna and Balaram angrily said, 'Who are you impostors? Get out of here. This house, these rooms, these sandesh, this yogurt, and this milk all belong to us.' Then Nityananda said, 'Those days when you stole yogurt and butter to eat are gone. Those days of the cowherd boys are over. Now the Brahmanas have taken charge. Recognize us and allow us to enjoy all the offerings. If you do not affectionately allow us to eat, then you will be beaten. Moreover, if we forcibly eat, who can stop us?'" This is her dream. Then Rama said to Krishna, "It will not be our fault if we bind you impostors here today." Then Balaram threatened Nityananda, "In the name of Krishna, you better not misbehave today. Nityananda replied, I am not afraid of you, Krishna, for my Lord is Gaurachandra Vishvambar. In this way, the four of you quarreled and forcibly ate each other's food. Someone grabbed another's food and ate, and someone ate the food from another's mouth with his own mouth. Then Nityananda called me and said, Oh, mother, please give me some rice. I'm hungry. When Nityananda said this to me, I woke up. But I could not understand anything, so I'm relating this to you. After hearing the topics of her dream, Lord Vishvambar laughed and spoke to his mother in sweet words. O mother, you have certainly seen a most auspicious dream. Please, do not disclose this to anyone. The deities in our house are full of life, and your dream has firmly established this fact in my heart. I often see that half of the foods that I offer vanish. Feeling shy, I don't tell anyone about this. I had some doubt about your daughter-in-law, but today that doubt has been removed. Vishnupriya, the mother of the universe, smiled on hearing the words of her husband. She had heard the entire narration of the dream from within another room. O mother, Vishvambar said, please hear my words. Let us immediately call Nityananda here to feed him. Mother Sachi was pleased to hear these words of her son and began gathering the ingredients for lunch. Lord Vishvambar quickly went to Nityananda's residence and invited him for lunch. Oh, Gosai, today you should take lunch at our house. But I tell you beforehand, do not create any mischief. Nityananda held his ears and said, Vishnu, Vishnu, only madmen create mischief. I think you consider me a mischief monger because you think everyone is like yourself. Speaking in this way, they both began to laugh. They then proceeded to the Lord's house while discussing topics of Krishna on the way. They both smiled as they sat down together, accompanied by their intimate associates like Gadadhar, Ishan. Ishan? That's Mother Sachi's assistant. Ishan gave them water to wash their feet. Then the Lord and Nityananda went to eat lunch. The mood in which the two lords sat, eating together, resembled that of Sri Ram and Lakshman at the house of Kaushalya. In this way, the two lords ate their lunch in the same mood, with the same affection, as the same persons. As Mother Sachi happily served them, she set out 3 plates by mistake, and they both began to laugh. When she returned to serve them more, she directly saw them as 5-year-old boys. She saw 2 enchanting boys, one with whitish complexion, the other was blackish. Both had 4 arms, and both were naked. She saw they had Conch Club Disc Lotus, Plow Mushala, Mark of Srivats, the Kaustubha gem, and their ears were decorated with shark-shaped earrings. She saw her daughter-in-law on the chest of her son. Then suddenly the whole scene disappeared. She fell on the ground unconscious, and all her clothes became wet with tears. Rice was scattered throughout the entire room. On seeing this wonderful sight, Sachi forgot herself. Mahaprabhu hurriedly washed his hands and picked up his mother. Oh, mother, please get up, calm yourself. Why did you suddenly fall to the ground? On regaining her consciousness, Mother Sachi quickly tied her hair. She did not say anything as she wept inside one of the rooms. She breathed heavily, and her entire body trembled. She was filled with ecstasy, and nothing else came to her mind. Then Ishan cleaned the entire room and honored all the remnants. Ishan is the most fortunate person within 14 worlds, for he served Mother Sachi throughout his entire life. In this way, many sweet pastimes took place every day. No one except the confidential servants of the Lord know about them. The topics of the Madhya Kanda are like pots of nectar. By hearing these topics, the atheism within one's heart is vanquished. In this way, Gaurachandra and the devotees engaged in chanting the holy names in Navadvip. All the Lord's associates who took birth in different places gradually came to Navadvip and joined him. When all the Lord's associates understood that the Lord had incarnated, their hearts were filled with ecstasy. As all the Vaishnavas saw the Lord reveal himself, they became fearless and overwhelmed with ecstasy. The Lord also accepted them as equal to his own life. They were all confidential members of the Lord's entourage. The Lord, for whom the Vedas constantly searched, embraced them all with love. The Lord regularly visited the houses of his devotees and had exhibited to them his various forms, such as his four-armed and six-armed forms. Sometimes the Lord went to the house of Gangadas or Murari, and sometimes he went to the house of Acharya Ratna. Nityananda constantly remained with the Lord. They were never separated for even a moment. Nityananda Sarup was always absorbed in the mood of a child, and Lord Vishwambar was also absorbed in various moods. According to the respective good fortune, the devotees who were like bumblebees at the lotus feet of the Lord saw Matsya, Kurma, Vraha, Vamana, and the string of forms of the Lord. Some days he cried in the mood of a gopi and could not remember whether it was day or night. Some days the Lord accepted the mood of Uddhava or Akrura, and some days he was absorbed in the mood of Balaram and asked for wine. Some days Vishwambar assumed the mood of the four-headed Brahma. After reciting the prayers offered by Brahma, he fell to the ground. Sometimes the Lord offered prayers in the mood of Prahlad. In this way, the Lord constantly floated in the ocean of devotional service. Upon seeing these pastimes, Shachi said, the mother of the universe, upon seeing these pastimes, Shachi, the mother of the universe, floated in ecstasy. She thought within her heart, this son may also leave home. Mother Sachi said, my dear son, go and take bath in the Ganges. The Lord replied, O mother, please chant the names of Krishna and Rama. Regardless of whatever Mother Sachi said to her son, Vishwambar would not reply anything other than Krishna. No one could understand the inconceivable moods of the Lord. Whatever mood he assumed appeared most enchanting. One day, a singer of Shiva's glories arrived. He began to play his small drum and chant the glories of Lord Shiva. He came to the Lord's doorstep for begging alms and began to dance in a circle while singing a song about Lord Shiva. As soon as Lord Vishwambar heard the qualities of Lord Shankara, he immediately took the form of Shankara with matted locks of hair. The Lord jumped on the shoulders of that singer and shouted loudly, I am that Shankara! Some people saw Mahaprabhu with matted locks of hair and playing a horn and damaru, drum, and he continually exclaimed, sing, sing. Whatever glorification of Shiva that great personality ever sang now bore its full fruits. Since that singer sang without offense, Gaurachandra climbed on his shoulders. After regaining external consciousness, Lord Vishwambar got down and personally placed alms in the singer's bag. Being fully satisfied, the singer left. All the devotees chanted the name of Hari. No explanation, just like waves of ecstatic expressions, one after the next. As the glories of the Lord were vibrated, devotional service to Krishna became manifest. In this way, the Lord enjoyed pastimes with his servants. The Lord said, O brothers, listen to the essence of all advice. Why are we uselessly wasting our nights? Make a resolution that from today on, we will congregationally chant the holy names at night. We will all perform Sankirtan and become merged in the Ganges of devotional service. Let the entire world be delivered by hearing the names of Krishna. Let the holy names be the life and wealth of you all. On hearing this, all the Vaishnavas became ecstatic. Thus, Mahaprabhu began his kirtan pastimes. Every night, kirtan was held at the house of Srivas, except some nights it was held at the house of Chandrasekhar. And here's who attended. Nityananda, Gadadhar, Advaita, Srivas, Vidyanidhi, Murari, Hiranya, Haridas, Gangadas, Vanamali, Vijay, Nandana, Jagadananda, Buddhimantakan, Narayana, Kashishvara, Vasudev, Rama, Garuda, Govinda, Govindanandana, Gopinath, Jagadish, Sriman, Sridhar, Sadashiva, Vrkreshwara, Srigarbha, Shuklambar, Brahmananda, Purushottama, Sanjay, and innumerable other servants of Lord Chaitanya were present in those kirtans. They all participated in the Lord's dancing. No one other than the Lord's associates was present there. The loud roaring of the Lord and the tumultuous chanting of Hari's name shattered the covering of the universe. Hearing that sound, the atheist jumped about in anger and said, "These fellows drink wine at night. These people know the mystic perfection of Madhumati. They chant mantras at night and call 5 virgins. 12 hours have passed and we could not sleep. All we hear is the loud sound of bowl, bowl." In this way, the atheist spoke in anger as Sri Sachinandana blissfully engaged in kirtan. As soon as the Lord heard the sound of kirtan, he lost external consciousness and fell to the ground. The Lord repeatedly fell to the ground with such force that the earth broke into pieces, and everyone became frightened. When Mother Sachi saw the Lord's soft body falling forcefully to the ground, she closed her eyes and remembered Govinda. Although the Lord fell with great force, due to being absorbed in the mood of a Vaishnava, Mother Sachi felt unhappy out of affection. Mother Sachi did not know how to prevent this. She repeatedly pleaded in the following words. It's very beautiful. "O Krishna, please give me this benediction. When Vishvambar falls forcefully to the ground, may I not know anything about it. O Krishna, please show me this mercy. Although due to spiritual ecstasy he does not feel any distress, I would be happy to remain unaware of this." Realizing the inner desire of Mother Sachi, Gaurachandra awarded her appropriate spiritual happiness. As long as the Lord was engaged in congregational chanting of the names of Hari, Mother Sachi remained devoid of external consciousness. There was no break in the Lord's ecstatic dancing. All of his associates chanted around him day and night. Sometimes the devotees chanted at the Lord's house, while Sri Sachinandana danced. Sometimes the Lord manifested his mood as the supreme controller. Sometimes he cried while saying, "I am the servant." O brothers, please hear attentively about the Lord's transformations of ecstatic love, which are unique throughout the innumerable universes. As Lord Gaurachandra danced in ecstasy, the devotees sang in ecstasy. On the day of Sri Hari Vasara, which is observed by chanting the names of Hari, the Lord, who is the life of the entire world, began to dance. The auspicious inauguration of chanting the names of Gopal and Govinda took place in the most pious courtyard of Srivas. Vishvambar began dancing from the time of sunrise, and the devotees sang sweetly in various groups. One group, headed by Srivas Pandit, and another group was headed by the chanting of Mukunda. Another group was headed by Govinda Ghosh. As all the devotees chanted during the dancing of Gaurachandra. As the powerful Nityananda caught hold of the Lord, Advaita secretly took the dust from the Lord's feet. The eyes of the devotees headed by Gadadhar filled with tears as they became overwhelmed with ecstasy in the Lord's kirtan. Now, hear the next 40 verses, which describe how the Lord, who is the life and soul of the entire universe, danced in ecstasy during kirtan. The name of Govinda vibrated in all directions as the son of Sachi became overwhelmed while dancing in ecstasy with his associates. Whenever the Lord cried, he cried for 3 hours. His hair became untied and scattered on the floor. Only a person whose heart is made of wood would not become overwhelmed and fall to the ground upon seeing the Lord's crying. When the Lord laughed loudly in ecstasy, he would continue laughing for 3 hours. The Lord forgot his own glories as he became absorbed in the mood of a servant. He repeatedly exclaimed, "I have conquered, I have conquered." When Mahaprabhu chanted in great ecstasy, "I have conquered, I have conquered," the devotees also imitated him by chanting, "I have conquered, I have conquered." Sometimes the Lord sang so loudly that the sound vibration pierced the covering of the universe. Sometimes his body became as heavy as the universe. Then none of his followers could hold him still. Sometimes he would become as light as cotton, and his followers would happily carry him on their shoulders. The pure devotees happily carried the Lord on their shoulders and wandered about the courtyard. Whenever the Lord fell unconscious to the ground out of ecstasy, the devotees became frightened and chanted the name of Hari in his ear. Sometimes his entire body shook vigorously like a boy's teeth chattering due to excessive cold. Sometimes his body perspired in such a way that it appeared that the Ganges was flowing from his body. Sometimes his body became hot as blazing fire, and when sandalwood pulp was smeared on his body, it dried immediately. Sometimes the Lord would sigh heavily, and everyone would move out of the way of his breath. Sometimes he tried to catch everyone's feet, and the Vaishnavas ran away out of fear. Sometimes he would sit, leaning against Nityananda, and sometimes he lifted his feet, looking at everyone, and smiled. Understanding the intention of the Lord, all the devotees stole the wonderful jewel-like dust from the Lord's lotus feet. Acharya Gosai said, "My dear thief, we have broken into your hidden treasury." Vishvambar rolled on the ground in ecstasy as all the devotees sang the glories of Krishna on all sides. So that's as far as I'm supposed to go this evening. We're going to have to continue tomorrow. It's very different than a Bhagavad Gita class, isn't it? Now, why don't we just do this and skip Bhagavad Gita? Well, or what's the function of Krishna Tattva in relation to appreciation for Leela? This is a natural discussion. Hare Krishna. We just finished reading a nice section of, it's leading up to the Mahaprakash Leela, but it's chapter 8 of Madhya Kanda, the manifestation of opulences. And the opulences, are, the Lord's divinity. We heard how the Lord showed, by visiting various homes of various devotees, he showed them a 4-armed form, a 6-armed form, the forms of Varaha, and this one and that one and the other one, the Shringadev, and doesn't give the details, but it just gives, a sample, like a grain of rice. And one of the grains was at the home of Sachi, a traveling minstrel, a worshipper of Lord Shiva, came singing songs of Lord Shiva with his begging bowl, and as he was singing, Lord Chaitanya manifested the form of Shankara with a long hair and a trident, and mounted the shoulders of the singer and told, continue singing, and they're both in ecstasy. And after some time, he regained external consciousness and put some alms in the beggar's bag and off he went. Meaning, in this way, the repertoire of that which is within the source of everything, Krishna is the source of everything, would from time to time become manifest for the visible sight of all the devotees. That the impression, the language, the mood created by his writing style is just waves of ecstasy, one after the next. Nobody knew what was going to happen next, and they really didn't care, and they just, whatever was his mood, everyone followed his mood. We discussed this yesterday evening. I believe it was yesterday evening. Prabhupada was like that. I shared something that I heard from Rupanuga, because he had much more association with Prabhupada than I did. I had my own little experience, but when Prabhupada was telling, because I didn't have this experience, Prabhupada would sometimes tell Bengali joke. Nobody understood it, but Prabhupada understood it. And when Prabhupada laughed, his laughter was contagious. No one understood the joke, but it just, the room became filled with laughter. Just his presence created that same impression within his followers. And then suddenly his mood might change to something, challenging the scientists or something, and it was like whiplash. And his presence was so powerful that it just created that, involuntarily, it created that, specifically at least, within his followers. So as an emissary of Lord Chaitanya and his spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta, what to speak of Lord Chaitanya himself? At least from this, we can understand the mood of Gaura Lila, the mood of Sankirtan pastimes, was contagious, and everyone became infected. And his moods would go this way, and his moods would go that way. Everyone would go with him and not feel at all uncomfortable, except when he would go crashing to the ground. So now the topic I was just starting to speak about is, how does the Leela fit together with Krishna Tattva? Because we do spend a good amount of time with Krishna Tattva, understanding the truths about Krishna. Supposing somebody doesn't understand the truths about Krishna and they hear these things, what's going to happen? They'll feel something, but it's not properly guided or properly oriented, and it can easily become misguided and imitated and so forth. And those that are transcendentalists, they know the difference. Here's another little Prabhupada story. In Mayapur, in the early 70s, there was just two buildings. There was what was then known as the Long Building, and there was the main temple with some residential quarters upstairs, including Prabhupada's quarters. That was it. And I was one day chanting japa in that park that's by the side of the Lotus Building. And I saw and heard a group of, it was after, everything's quiet. It was after the morning program and after breakfast, and everyone's doing what everyone's doing, and it's just very quiet. So down the main road from the main gate came some minstrels, some Bengali kirtaniers. They weren't singing along the way, but they were carrying their instruments. And then they went into the temple room, and they started singing. As soon as they started singing, I looked up Prabhupada on his floor. It depends on whether you're from India or America, but the second floor. And he looked over the veranda. And he turned and called his servant and said, told them something. I couldn't hear what he said, but he said, get them out. Because they were Baula people that shortly after, just from hearing the sound of their kirtan, shortly after, they were rolling on the ground and crying and wailing and, screaming. The imitation group, kirtan, imitating Lord Chaitanya's ecstasies. So they were, ushered out. By the time that the people came to usher them out, they were already rolling around and doing their thing. And as they were walking out, lighting their beedies and hanging out, it was an imitation. It was very clear. And I was, one of the shocking things was just by hearing the quality of the kirtan, Prabhupada understood what was going on, where they were coming from. I couldn't hear the difference. He could. So we engage in hearing Krishna Katha to give a proper foundation. And, it's we spend a lot of time in building a proper foundation, because if you're going to build something, you don't build it without a proper foundation, especially if it's going to last a long time. And want it to be genuine as well as durable. So we spend lots of time with Krishna Tattva. And our acharyas also spent lots of time with Krishna Tattva, establishing truths that are the basis and foundation of the evolution of, from Sambandha Gyan to proper Prayojana Gyan, Abhideya Gyan, the activities of devotional service. We don't advocate jumping quickly to the ecstasies. Now this is Vrindavan Das Thakur, who is writing about the ecstasies of the pastimes, Gaura Lila. Mildly, here and there, he interjects scriptural verses, which means he knew the scriptures, Bhagavad Gita verses and Bhagavatam verses, and there's a sprinkling of that. But the main emphasis is his sharing of the pastimes. In at least we take it as authentic manner. The biographers of his time, the scholars of his time, accepted it as authentic, so we can accept it as authentic descriptions of what actually took place. And it's unfathomable that he was showing these different forms in different homes, one after the next, and his symptoms of ecstasy, and as we just read this last 40 verses, this mood, that mood. So what is it? Is it exaggeration? Or there's different, scholastic terminology for literature like this. It's just, an enthusiastic devotee describing in an enthusiastic, exaggerated way a wonderful personality or something like that. We don't take it like that, but in order to understand it, to have it in the right context, we need the ABCs. We need Krishna Tattva. And as that Krishna Tattva is understood, because from time to time, Vrindavan Das will say, this is Lord Narayan, performing childhood pastimes, performing scholarly pastimes, performing kirtan of himself pastimes. It's Lord Narayan. So he's well aware of the divinity, but he hasn't taken the time and trouble to establish the foundation of Krishna Tattva or even Gaura Tattva. It's there, but so in our, as most of you know, maybe all of you know, the GBC Strategic Planning Committee has had some number of days where they're interviewing people related to Chaitanya Charitamrita And, the punchline of all the interviews is, would you like to say something to the audience here about the importance of reading Chaitanya Charitamrita? So I've been, have you been listening to some of those, reviewing some of those? Really amazing, really amazing. And it's full of surprises. Different in the personalities of the persons being interviewed becomes also very clear. Nice. Narayani, who she and her husband joined the Boston Temple about 2 months after I did. It was in 1970, summer of 1970, a few years ago. And I was a trade to New York in exchange for somebody that could run the printing press, so I went to New York. So I didn't have much interaction with them. So I heard her description of the story of what happened, how they went to India for then 47 years, something like that. Her appreciation of Chaitanya Charitamrita is it gives us a nice picture of Lord Chaitanya's gift, how to understand it, how to appreciate it, because that's what we're doing. And it was in contrast to something that I said. I said, you may not want to hear this because I feel devotees should be principally reading Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam deeply, because this is our postgraduate study. How can you understand the postgraduate study without the undergraduate and graduate study? And so, because that's what we do in Iskcon, and that's largely what Prabhupada had us do. The Bhakti Shastris. Morning class, here's a little sharing. Morning class, Bhagavatam. Evening class, Bhagavad Gita. Nectar Devotion was published. We had a third class, midday after lunch. It was Bhakti Shastri. That was how devotees were. And how long does it take until you can properly and thoroughly understand those Bhakti Shastri literatures? And then comes Bhakti Vaibhav, and then comes, later comes Chaitanya Charitamrita. At least that's my orientation. At the same time, here we are reading Chaitanya Bhagavata that just doesn't even explain Krishna Tattva or Gaura Tattva. It's just like the exhibitions of ecstasy of Lord Chaitanya in the exchanges of love with his devotees. So that's what it looks like in the matured stage, in the fully matured stage of the Supreme Lord with his eternal associates, engaging in wonderful pastimes. And even like this Lord Shiva worshipper, the singer, minstrel, engaging him in ecstatic devotion. That's Lord Chaitanya. And that's the person we're following. And that's what's, as the path goes further and further and further, that's that's the prayojana stage, at least for Lord Chaitanya and his dear associates. And some of his dear associates wrote literatures that are abundantly filled with Krishna Tattva, because it's important to have a proper foundation of those understandings, because otherwise it's taken cheaply and we won't understand, or something like that. And because I've been doing this, that's one last little point, see what there's some discussion. For about, 3 weeks, it's just been chapter after chapter of Chaitanya Bhagavata every evening, and sometimes midday and evening. And audiences largely are not accustomed to hearing this. And, there's an honest feedback saying, I'm having trouble relating to it. I'm having trouble understanding it. I'm having trouble, I don't doubt it, but it's so different. So it is different. Ramchandra came with a specific mission, and each of the forms of the Lord some specific mission. And Lord Chaitanya's mission is a specific mission. The highest stages of love of God. I don't think I have that sheet with me. There's did you happen to hear Sachinandan Swami's interview with Gopal Bhatta? Please listen. There's a little section, Gopal Bhatta Prabhu asks a question. Did Lord Chaitanya give any pronunciation or indication of what happens if you follow him? And Sachinandan Swami rubbed his hands together and said, I was prepared for this. And he pulled out a quote, and I have to paraphrase it. Do you have it? Oh. It's from Kavi Karnapur. Thank you. Kavi Karnapur's Sri Chaitanya Chandrodaya, just like Chandrodaya Mandir. And it sometimes puts a natakam, means it's a drama. Just like the Jagannath Priya Natakam that Tamal Krishna Maharaj composed, means it's a drama. So it's a drama. These are verses from a drama. And Advaita Acharya has just had some wonderful exchange. This is the last chapter, the last section of the last chapter of the whole book, Kavi Karnapur. It's really beautiful. He's an unsung hero in our line of glorifiers of Lord Chaitanya. Advaita, what more can you do to please me? ? O Lord, you have revealed the most confidential pastimes of Lord Krishna. You have crushed the age of Kali, and you have described the secret meaning of devotional service and pure love of Krishna. You have brought all auspiciousness to the devotees, expert at relishing the mellows of transcendental pastimes. You have openly revealed the ecstatic, pure, devotional love felt by Sri Radha, the crushed jewel of all the gopis. Paragraph. I have one request. So it's like, apparently, Lord Chaitanya has said, please ask for a benediction, kind of a thing. What more can I ask? You've done all these things. Outside of the Vedas' wisdom, you've done what you've done. I have one request. I think material piety, economic development, and sense gratification worthless and insignificant. I don't want any impersonal liberation. I only want that in the next life, I may have association of your devotees. Now he's Mahavishnu, it's like, but Sri Chaitanya, so be it. This is the promise. That I will go to Vrindavan, and there I will accept you as my associates, and with my sweet pastimes I will fill your hearts with bliss. To you who have faith in Vrindavan, I will give splendid spiritual forms like my own. That is what I will do for you. Paragraph. Those of you whose hearts are bound to me in this form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even if your rasas are friendship or servitude to Sri Sri Radha Madhava or Lord Dwarkadish, or if your rasas are friendship or servitude to any of my other incarnations, I will make my eternally liberated associates. I will make into my eternally liberated associates in Goloka, Vrindavan. That's a good reason to read what we're reading. Because we don't commonly hear about Lord Chaitanya and, what's attractive about Lord Chaitanya? Well, he gave the Yuga Dharma, that's nice. But this is more than, this is This Chaitanya Bhagavata is very special. And Chaitanya Charitamrita gives the Krishna Tattva, or the Gora Tattva, or the Bhagavat Tattva of the truths about Lord Chaitanya, so that one can, with confidence, give one's heart, not just be moved by, the heart, be moved by buddhi of who is Lord Chaitanya. Advaita, so be it. By your desire, may you give us all different eternal forms and different eternal residences. We will eternally remember your wonderful transcendental pastimes. I pray that until the end of the Kalpa, poets may write books about your transcendental pastimes. May the saintly devotees see and hear those plays. When the wicked see and hear those plays, may they become free of envy, filled with happiness. And when the kings of this world see and hear these plays, may they become filled with devotion to your lotus feet and inspired to always protect their subjects. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, so be it. And that's the end of Sri Chaitanya Chandramrita. No, over here. So supposing, like many people that have given feedback, they have a hard time relating to all this. I request you to consider the perspective of persons that grew up in America, like three of us here, and didn't hear anything about anything until we were introduced to. I mean, when the first time I got Bhagavad Gita, I couldn't even pronounce the name. What to speak of, chapter 1 and who's who in chapter 1 and all the names, and in Mahabharata and Ramayana and Bhagavatam. And so, the personalities of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, as you hear about, similar to hearing about Ramayana, I've had this experience, you hear about the personalities in Ramayana and it starts to grow on you. Like, you hear Lakshman, and this whole image comes in the mind and in the heart of Lakshman's love for Ram, and and their relationship and the mood, and how he enhanced Lord Ram's pastimes in so many ways. And anyway, without going into all those, just by hearing again and again, it something happens. The names become personalities, and the exchanges of love become palpable. And it's important to have the Krishna Tattva Foundation. So we spend lots of time over there. Bhagavad Gita, Nectar Devotion, Ishopanishad, Nectar of Instruction, understand proper behavior, proper qualities before, venturing into outer space with Lord Chaitanya's loving exchanges with his associates. But it's, that's very inspiring. It's mesmerizing. And as we just read, one becomes attached to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a genuine way, and he'll take us to the spiritual world. That's his promise. It's nice. So it's a very wonderful package. Sambandha again, Abhideya again, Prayojana again. So we're spending some time over here in the Prayojana realm. Whew. Chaitanya Charitamrita fills in a lot of that space because it gives lots of the tattva along with the lila. And therefore Prabhupada invested so much time in making that available to us before Chaitanya Bhagavata, while Bhaktisiddhanta made commentary in both. Anyway, those just some. I'm enjoying this activity, knowing that it's kind of new and a little remote for many people. It's okay. Continue hearing, and it becomes full and attractive. Let's see if there's some discussion along with the crying out there. We have a portable microphone. We do a little disinfecting protocol.
Is it? Yeah, just the mask.
Without the mask. Thanks.
Okay. Maharaj, you spoke about the different writing mood of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavat, as compared to, well, you didn't speak about this, but I'm speculating. So the mood of Srimad Bhagavatam and the mood of Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat, especially in terms of something you mentioned regarding exaggeration. When we read statements like, all the living entities in the whole universe were delivered when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was here, or that there were hundreds of millions or tens of millions of people in this little space or in this little town. Do we take them as literal in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, or do we take them as, sometimes we hear the term pious exaggeration, quote unquote? And how does this contrast with the Bhagavatam? There's a lot in there in this question, I know, but I was just wondering about these different modes of writing.
Nice question. You're familiar probably with Haridas Thakur and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu having some discussion on one of those two, all living entities have been delivered. Are you familiar with that discussion? A little bit?
I'm familiar with a big discussion between Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur.
Lord Chaitanya objected, saying, Haridas, how can you say this? We see living entities everywhere. How can you say they've all been delivered? And Haridas says, it's true. It's true. I'll prove to you it's true. They've all been delivered. And then there's this really curious statement. Don't ask me to explain it. There's living entities that don't have forms yet. Not just, non-moving living entities like trees, but living entities that are, because living entities are everywhere, and they have manifested in those forms. You delivered a whole set of living entities, the whole universe is worth. You delivered them. And others have taken their place. That was his conclusion. And Lord Chaitanya doesn't refute it. He doesn't accept it. He doesn't refute it. There's no discussion about it. That's what he says. And in Madhvacharya's teachings, the living entities within an atom is unlimited. Not just super souls within every atom. Madhvacharya's teachings, because it's another dimension. Like, with matter, if I can't merge this cartel with that cartel because there's space, that they're occupying space. But the soul doesn't have that same rule. There can be unlimited jivas within the same space, within the point of a pin, the 1/10,000th, the tip of a hair. Anyway, that's Madhvacharya's teaching. So how many living entities are there within the universe? Uncountable number. Some finite number, because they're not created. But so, that's Haridas's statement. Those living entities that weren't manifest yet are now manifest. by your potency. Now, the other one, how many living entities within some space? There's two ways. There are three ways. One is it's just exaggeration. And there's a Sanskrit term for this I've learned. It's called artavad. And it's discussed in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There are some places where there are some statements in Scripture that are artavad. It's exaggeration. The purpose of the exaggeration is to inspire people in bhakti. But it's not common. In Bhagavatam, that's not the case. It's, it's as it is. But there are some places. He doesn't specify, at least I'm not familiar with his specifying, here's an example of exaggeration. But then there is another picture of space and the numbers of living entities that can fit within space. And that's discussed at length in the latter section of the Bhagavatam, where it says the number of bodyguards of King Ugrasena. Are you familiar with that? And it gives this gigantic number. And that's just bodyguards. And how big is Dwarka? How are you going to fit all those people? So the answer that there's extended commentary on that, and it's of the spiritual dimension. The spiritual dimension is quite flexible. It's the space and time are quite flexible, both. It can accommodate all kinds of time and space according to Krishna's will for his pastimes. That's his potencies. So it can be one of those. You're speaking of a spiritual realm that is quite expandable time and space-wise, or it's the enthusiasm of the author speaking with such enthusiasm that it's just enthusiasm. It's just the ecstatic expression, not to be taken literally. But so it can be from different categories of possibilities. And, a lot depends on one's faith. And, a lot depends upon one's spiritual intelligence to understand, is it this or is it that?
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for that answer. Thank you.
Over here. I think you can reuse it.
Thank you. Krishna?
You're on.
Hare Krishna. So thank you, Maharaj, for giving so much of your time and energy to us in North America and DC and Virginia and Maryland. So I don't know if it's a question or so much just clarification, but if I heard you right, Lord Chaitanya said in this play, the end of this play, we talk a lot about Krishna fulfills desires, and I've been known to say on more than a few occasions that we have to be careful what you desire for, because Krishna will fulfill that desire. So we should really focus on our desire. And yet, what I heard you say was that a devotee may have a certain approach Krishna in a certain way with a certain desire based on their attraction to that form of the Lord. But Lord Chaitanya said, but I will take you to a higher place. I will not that I won't fulfill that desire, I'll fulfill the even higher desire. I'll take you to Goloka Vrindavan, although you may not be desiring that. You may be approaching me in another rasa, but I will give you a higher benediction. Did I hear that correctly?
That's not what I understood from what I read, but others could comment in addition to what, because I just read it now for the third time. and I've been sharing it with others. My understanding is this, similar to what this chapter 8 section that we read, within Lord Chaitanya is everything. This form of the Lord, that form of the Lord, and this mood and that mood, and within him is everything. And one who becomes attracted to different forms of the Lord in different rasas, provided they have an attachment to Vrindavan, there's the condition, provided they have an attachment to Vrindavan, and provided they have an attachment to him, he will take them to Vrindavan. They don't have to give up, like Murari Gupta, for example, they don't have to give up their attraction for Ram. He honors, to test him. He couldn't give up Ram. But at the same time, he has, unbridled love for Lord Chaitanya. So such a person like Murari Gupta, who has faith in Vrindavan and has faith in Lord Chaitanya, can have that same mood of love for Lord Ram in Lord Chaitanya's presence in the spiritual world. Now specifically, I don't know what the Bengali is that they're translating from, but the word Vrindavan is used several times. So it's not exactly they'll take them to a higher, but they'll fulfill that in connection with him, in a spiritual form like his. So I'll say it even, a little more specifically, or, with boundaries. My understanding goes like this, from Bhaktisiddhanta's writings. In the eternal abode of Lord Chaitanya is called Svetadweep, and that Svetadweep is a portion of Krishna Loka. 4. Vrindavan, Mathura, Dwarka, and Svetadweep. And Svetadweep is where Lord Chaitanya is performing his eternal pastimes with his eternal associates. So, those that have love for Krishna and are followers of Lord Chaitanya to achieve that love for Krishna, because without going, there's conditions of entering into Braja Prem, but entering into Krishna Prem, if one does so through the love that one has for Lord Chaitanya, one will manifest form in both of those realms, meaning in Braja and in Svetadweep. And the technology isn't explained. But, Lord Chaitanya fulfills that. You become attached to me, and you become attached to Vrindavan, and I'll take you there. Regardless of what you're, whether it's Dwarkadish specifically, you want to worship me, you want to worship Krishna in Dwarka, that will be fulfilled. And I'll give you a form where you can enjoy pastimes like me, with me. That's my understanding. And it says that there's two statements that are conditional: attached to Vrindavan, attached to Lord Chaitanya.
So he really makes it accessible.
Yeah. I shared this little passage with somebody that is kind of, way out there. And they wrote back saying, since I've been crying since I received this, because this is my faith, that, although I'm way out there, I have attachment for Lord Chaitanya, and he's going to take care of me. Although I'm, my picture of worship and so forth is way out there, without the details. It's faith. It carries you, and it's reciprocated with. No. I told you I'm going to put you on the spot. You're okay. All right. Anyone else? Yes?
Okay. I mean, I just have some clarification questions.
Okay, if you can remove your mask, I'll hear it better. Thank you.
So we read about 400 Vishnu,
Yeah.
400 babies with conch shell, disc, and lotus. So when I read Krishna book, the form that first appeared to Devaki is I was confused to see that Vishnu can also appear as a baby, but it seems like it's not really depicted in the pictures, right, as the 400 form of baby Vishnu, but that's what Vrindavan Das Thakur had mentioned, Sachimata's vision.
I'm not sure what you're asking. The four-arm form that Krishna showed to Vasudeva and Devaki was Vasudeva Krishna, or Krishna in his opulent feature, like he shows in Dwarka, his opulent feature, four-arm form. And then in Vrindavan is his two-arm form, holding flute. So your question is Lord Chaitanya showing the four-arm form? And we just heard yes. And with the symbols of Vishnu in his hands, yes, he showed. Because within the source of everything is everything, including that form. So he sometimes showed that form. Does that answer?
Right. I was thinking like in the baby form it was written.
Oh,
as a
it doesn't
5 year.
say. When Krishna showed the four-arm form in the prison house of Kamsa, at least the paintings traditionally show a full adult form. And then he assumed a childlike form, two-armed.
Right. Okay. So he's only Krishna is a baby. Okay.
But here's a curveball. You ready for? Get your catcher's mitt out. This is baseball talk. In the four-arm, the six-arm form that Lord Chaitanya showed to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was two arms Lord Ram, two arms Krishna, two arms Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Danda, and Kamandalu.
Mm-hmm.
However, in Chaitanya Bhagavata, there's another six-arm form that he showed, which was the Vishnu form with the four symbols of Vishnu and Radha Krishna holding a flute. So he has a whole repertoire of forms because within him is everything, and sometimes. And according to his mood and the person who he's with, he reciprocates. We read an earlier chapter, just to carry on a little bit. He heard Murari Gupta reciting Vishnu Sahasranam. Murari Gupta?
Yes.
Vishnu Sahasranam, and he mentioned the name of Varaha. So Lord Chaitanya not only got in the mood of Varaha, he manifested the form of Varaha. And Murari Gupta knew what to do. He took the water pot and placed the water pot. So in the snout of the Lord Varaha, he could carry the earth from the depths of the Garbhodak ocean. I mean, so why? Well, he was singing Vishnu Sahasranam or reciting it, and Varaha's name was mentioned, and so he entered that mood. Now, Murari Gupta is a worshipper of Ram. He could have shown his enemy. It's not a cause and effect, material cause. It's totally in this realm of spontaneous exhibition of reciprocation. Perhaps there's some profound reason why he showed the Varaha form, why he waited to that moment why in different persons' home he showed different forms. Who can say? It's beyond telescope time. It's just ecstatic expressions.
Yeah. Second clarification question is what you read of from Kavi Karnapur. So is the benediction that those who are engaged in dasya and or the fraternity, they they advance into Madhurya and
No, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that they'll change to some other rasa. It says, should I read it again?
Sure.
Would you like me to read it again? Can we read it again? So the context is, ask for a benediction. Advaita Acharya said, how can I ask for anything more? You've done this, you've done this, you've done this, but I do have one. I always want your devotees' association. So be it. I will go to Vrindavan, and there I will accept you as my associates with my sweet pastimes. With my sweet pastimes, I will fill your hearts with bliss. To you who have faith in Vrindavan, I will give splendid spiritual forms like my own. That is what I will do for you. Those of you whose hearts are bound to me in this form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even if your rasas are friendship or servitude to Sri Sri Radha Madhava or Lord Dwarkadish, or if your rasas are friendship and servitude to any of my other incarnations, I will make it into my eternally liberated associates in Goloka Vrindavan. So he doesn't change their rasa, but they'll be fulfilled in relation with him, in forms like him. In that, it doesn't. The editing, the understanding that I shared is my understanding. It's not what he says, but it comes from this over here and that over there. In Krishna Loka, Lord Chaitanya's eternal abode is there. It's called Svetadweep, and those that have love for Lord Chaitanya have pastime to Lord Chaitanya in Svetadweep as well as in the other parts of Krishna Loka, simultaneously. That's my understanding. But it doesn't change rasa, or any of my forms. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes. That is my promise. That is what I will do for you. That is what I will do for you. To you who have faith in Vrindavan, I will give splendid spiritual forms like my own. That is what I will do for you. Now fill your hearts with bliss. Engage with you in my sweet pastimes. Microphone over here, behind the wall.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for this very inspiring discussion. Maharaj, I heard once one pastime where Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked Srila Prabhupada, if I can't remember, Chaitanya, or I'm paraphrasing, or Krishna at the time of death, then what will happen? And he said that Lord Chaitanya will forcibly enter your mind and you'll go back.
He'll intervene, yeah.
So I was wondering, with what you explained right now, it seems that the access is through Lord Chaitanya, but he's saying that even if you're attached to some of my other incarnations, I will still... And you explained that Murari Gupta was attached to Lord Ram, but he still had love for Lord Chaitanya. So it seems like that's that the love for Lord Chaitanya is there's no
it's
way.
All encompassing.
Yeah, there's.
It's one of the conditions. So one may have. Do you know devotees, Iskcon devotees, that have a special attachment for Lord Nrsingadev? Do you know some Iskcon devotees that have some special attachment for Lord Ramachandra? And those devotees, they're Iskcon devotees, so they know the position of Krishna as the original source of everything, etc., etc. They know, the Bhagavatam's message that's, taught to beginners or, near beginners. Krishna is the source of all avatars. And they have that. So what's going to be their situation? It's like that. They're not. They understand Lord Chaitanya. They have love for Lord Chaitanya. They're engaged in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan service. Indra Maharaj is an example. He loves Lord Nrsimhadev. Ask him. But he's look at what he's doing for Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, and without other examples, many other examples. Lord Chaitanya accepted Sridhar Swami, the predecessor commentator on the Bhagavatam. That's authoritative commentary on the Bhagavatam. Who was his Ishtadev? Lord Nrsimhadev. Now he knew Krishna Tattva. He knew the Bhagavatam. Krishna is to Bhagavan Swayam. So how does that fit? I mean, it's not Lord Chaitanya centered, but it's Krishna centered. He has that affinity. Krishna is all-encompassing. Yes, we have something up here.
Our original attachment towards Krishna or any other form of Krishna, is it original or it changes? Because I was asking, because before Lord Chaitanya, this prem towards Radha Krishna was not so much prominent. So does that mean that before that it changed, like all these people who are now after Lord Chaitanya, they will have this mood, and before that?
It's not static. It's dynamic. So I could say, not exactly, or you could say yes and no. Here's a nice example right from Chaitanya Charitamrita. The South Indian Brahmin who was a devotee of Lord Ram. Do you know the story?
Yeah.
Yeah? When Lord Chaitanya came, he was chanting Ram's name constantly, and he was going to fast till death because Sita's been kidnapped, and Lord Chaitanya said, it's not possible. Sita can't be touched by Ravan. That's not possible. So trust me. Break your fast. Don't give up your life. Then he went and got Kurma Puran and brought it back. And so when he brought it back, the man was chanting Krishna's name. So he asked him, how did this happen? He said, by your association. Now, Murari Gupta couldn't give up Ram. So is there room for both? There's room for both. It's the same Lord Chaitanya. And the hearts of persons are different. So your question seems to be something like, is there an eternal, intrinsic to the soul, affinity for this form of the Lord or that form of the Lord? Or is it fluid and dynamic? Well, in the case of Murari Gupta, it's not fluid. In the case of this other Brahmin, it's fluid. Through the principle of association. Now that's what we're getting to, like in a very deep and profound level, not just a superficial. I was born with, we went to the temple nearby our home that was this temple, so we worship this form of the Lord, and that's what we do because my grandmother did it, and that kind of thing. Or my family practice was like this. But your question seems to be more on the soul level. Is there intrinsic affinity for a particular form of the Lord? Or is it dynamic? Yes. It can be either. That help? What's yours? A lot depends on association. That's the answer.
Another one, Maharaj.
Okay.
So when Lord Chaitanya said, talked about this prem, Krishna prem, this conjugal love, why it is said that this is the highest, and let's say the devotion of, let's say, Prahlad Maharaj, he is also considered to be one of the foremost.
He's pure devotee.
Right.
We don't say he's anything other than a pure devotee. So there's more sophisticated and involved kinds of answers. Here's a real simple one: perfect, more perfect, most perfect. And the most perfect has to do with the intensity of love, or even more specifically, the word that's used by our acharyas, because it's right in their writings, is mamata. He's mine. Possessiveness or intimacy. But there are different ways that word is. But Prahlad is saying there's nothing else, right? It's in his prayers. You're the master, I'm the servant. That's it. And the possessiveness of master and servant is intensified in other rasas. So it's an intensity of that possessiveness, and it takes the shape of rasa. And there's other things that get involved in rasa than that one thing, but there's a certain intensity of the mood of submission and possessiveness. That means I am yours and you are mine. It's a two-way possessiveness. So, you can read Nectar Devotion or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and try to discern the tattva of that topic. But there are intensities of love. Is that all right? And it's not to say Prahlad is, disparaged because he's not at the top. He's a pure devotee. He's worshipable. Deliver of what he said to Lord Nrsingadev is, you sent me here to teach the way of pure devotional service. So that pure devotional service is a fundamental cornerstone for us. So we follow him. And then there's intensities of all of that are exclusively exhibited in Vrindavan. Prahlad doesn't have access to that. Lakshmi Devi herself has no access to that. That's another part of the teaching. You know that one. Right? Some idea at least. Anything else? We have something online?
She was thanking you for reading the Chaitanya Bhagavata every day, and she loved it.
Okay. It's appreciation. Last chance. Anything? You don't have to ask. It's just say you're happy or something. Yeah.
Yeah, after listening like Chaitanya Bhagavata, I feel like so ecstatic.
Okay. Okay. You're not on yet.
Joshi, dear Maharaj, I heard from a devotee friend that a Siksha Guru is also capable of taking a disciple back to Godhead as much as Diksha Guru. Is that true?
I don't know what that has to do with our topic this evening. I guess it depends on the Shiksha Guru. we don't this is just a little delicate territory. We don't neglect the principle of diksha. We don't neglect the principle of shiksha. And the qualification of a shiksha giving person depends on the qualification of that shiksha giving person. But the shiksha giving person will naturally say, my dear devotee, part of the necessity for you is to receive diksha also. So, depending upon the context of the question and the circumstance, the answer can be yes, or it can be conditionally yes. Yeah. Let's take, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. His Diksha Guru was not nearly as qualified as his Shiksha Guru. That he was delivered. So was it his Diksha Guru or his Shiksha Guru? It's the qualified person. Anyway, it's a. Let's go to the next question. Yes, one more. Yeah, you're. No, you got it. You got it.
Thank you, Maharaj, for all those wonderful, illuminating answers. Maharaj, I was wondering about, we hear about Goloka Vrindavan often. We hear about Krishna, his parents, his friends.
You're reading the right books.
We don't hear so much about Shvetadvip. You mentioned Shvetadvip.
We don't.
Here in Navadvip, and we do hear that Navadvip is identical to the abode, I think, unless I'm speculating.
Yes, you're right.
Identical to Shvetadvip. So I was wondering, here we see that Mahaprabhu is here and the 6 Goswamis are here, Shachi Mata are here, and Jagannath Mishra is here, and so forth. So in Shvetadvip, are the forms, do the forms parallel those here?
Absolutely.
And what about Krishnadas, Kaviraj Goswami, and all the other devotees?
They have their spiritual identity. Mm-hmm. Now I don't know if they go by the same name or something like that. Mm. That kind of detail is not, but they're there. They're Lord Chaitanya's associates. Mm. They're perfected souls. Whatever it's going to look like, or the names and titles and so forth, they're there.
Okay, Maharaj. Specifically, I don't know why I've always had this question. Do the 6 Goswamis look like the 6 Goswamis?
Well, we don't have that kind of understanding. But here's something that I came across in the last 2 years, and it got confirmed by multiple sources. According to Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I always had a different idea. And it was kind of like a shock to my system. But anyway, here it goes. Eternally, in Krishna Loka, Krishna's form is 16. Now, question. Wait a minute. We hear that when Krishna descends into this world, he performs all those same activities that take place in Krishna Loka. He just, does it again. That was my understanding. But there's obviously if he's 16, the babyhood, the childhood, and young boy pastimes are not there. But there's a bhav, there's a semblance of a mood of those pastimes, that when those associates descend, they see the pastimes. So that there's a special sweetness of Krishna's pastimes in this world that are not exhibited The bhav is there, but they're not exhibited in Krishna Loka. But the feelings of love, let's say, Mother Jasoda and Nanda, for Krishna, is the same. Although he doesn't perform all those pastimes, etc., etc. Apparently. They're not in a manifest stage, at least. But, the bhav is there, and they're in their heart. There's a lot that goes on in the heart of a devotee, and the special exquisiteness of Lord Chaitanya's, of Krishna's childhood pastimes is there displayed in this material realm, at least on the earth planet, once in a day of Brahma, and then again, and then again, and then again, and it revitalizes those that have that bhav, that sentiment of love, to see the pastimes again and again. Now, what do we understand about these things? We're little people that are struggling with, our impurities. But that's the picture that our acharyas give of the spiritual world. I had this discussion with Burijan Prabhu on this topic when I was just discovering it, and asked him, "Have you heard this?" And he waited a while, said, "I've been waiting a while, contemplating this," and he said, "I haven't decided yet." He said, "But if either one of us get there first, you can send back a postcard and tell us." So it's beyond our conception. In other words, why worry about it? It is what it is. But that's what our acharyas are saying. Now, there are some of these questions that are, not only super esoteric, but beyond our understanding, even if we were given that information. So what's come back to the Krishna Tattva and the Abhideya, understand Sambandha again and Abhideya again, and do that nicely, and then the richness of that further stage of bhakti will become, all the more relishable for us. No harm. Being curious, it's a sign of intelligence. But, we also should know what our boundaries are. And we certainly accept the authority of our acharyas. When Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, and Vishwanath Chakravarti and Sanatana Goswami all say the same thing. I don't need to search further. Can I understand it? Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Yeah. Wow, it's 10 after 8.
This question, like in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we read this section. I can't remember if it's Gopakumar or the Brahmana that he's talking to. Like they're in Goloka Vrindavan, and they're seeing all these pastimes of Krishna, including the demon pastimes and so on. So how do we understand that part?
There's specifically demons in Vrindavan, in Goloka. That's the question, specifically.
That even the childhood pastimes or all the different pastimes, they were seeing while they were in Goloka Vrindavan. And I said, including the demons. So, like I've heard that even the sense of demons, it's like there's just that feeling, but there's no real demons in. But anyway, that's a different topic. But how to understand that they were seeing all these pastimes?
Well, I just take the two topics. I'm not sure I'm saying the name properly. Shivaram Maharaj's book, Krishna Sangiti. That's it? Sangati. He has a whole section that there are demons. not just it's a bhav, but there are demons, and he has this rationale. So there are schools that say this and schools that say that, and I'm in the school that says this, not that, but it's not so relevant. So but the exhibition of something is revealed to a devotee out of their ecstatic love. So Krishna may not be regularly performing those pastimes, but out of ecstatic love, Krishna may show this and may show that. Because it's within him. Everything is within him. Then comes, the one of the questions that comes is, what's real? Is my experience what's real? Or even if I don't experience it, it's real? It's kind of an existential question. So at least everything has a source, and Krishna is that source of everything. Everything is within him. And so whether he's manifesting or not manifesting, everything is within him. And he can disclose anything to anybody as he so desires, and in reciprocation with their regard for him. That's my answer to that. What they saw, was it A or B? Was it just their ecstatic devotion and Krishna exhibited something? Or it's a regular affair that's going on in Krishna Loka, that Krishna is performing childhood pastimes and combating with demons, and it's a regular affair? Or not? I'm of the school, I like this one. It's there is a bhav, and Krishna can reciprocate with one's love however he likes, and then withdraw it. And it's like he does with Mother Jasoda, for example. And she forgets everything because of her love is so strong. So that's with Mother Jasoda. And anyway, different persons, Krishna can reciprocate however he likes, because everything is within him. He can exhibit whatever he likes. That, to me, that's consistent with what our acharyas say, to see even the materialist. If Krishna wants, how can a materialist see Krishna? Because he reveals himself. And that's when he performs his scheduled pastimes, and he can reveal himself otherwise too. It's just it's an exhibition of his mercy, because everything is within him. And if he wants, no. I would want to go over the commentary of Sanatana Goswami on that section to see what Sanatana Goswami says. I think we should end. Anybody has something burning they'd like to add to this? It's 8:15. Thank you very much. Prabhupada Ki Jai.